My name is Grace Mitchell. I'm 36 years old, and if you had asked me a month ago what mattered most in my life, I wouldn't have said happiness. I wouldn't have said love. I would have said stability. The kind you build quietly, carefully. The kind that doesn't need attention to exist, but somehow holds everything together when life starts pulling at the edges. I thought I had that. I really did. I thought I understood exactly where the lines were in my life, what belonged to me, what belonged to my children, and what belonged to the complicated, sometimes exhausting family that came with loving my husband's side of the family. I was wrong. The moment everything started shifting didn't come with shouting. There were no slammed doors, no dramatic betrayal you could point to and say, "That's when it broke." It started with something quieter, something easier to ignore. "That dress looks cheap." The words landed softly, almost casually. But I watched what they did. My daughter Emma froze. Not dramatically, not obviously, just still. Like someone had quietly reached inside her and turned something off. It was her 13th birthday. We were standing in my in-laws' kitchen, surrounded by relatives, half-finished conversations, and the kind of forced laughter that fills rooms where people are trying too hard to look like a happy family. Emma had picked that dress herself. Light blue, simple, not expensive, not flashy. Just something she loved. She had been twirling in it all week at home, asking me if it looked grown up enough. And now she stood there, holding a stack of plates, like they suddenly weighed 100 pounds. Sabrina leaned casually against the counter, iced coffee in hand, like she had just commented on the weather. Her daughter, Kylie, giggled beside her. Not surprised. Not uncomfortable. Like it was a joke they'd shared before. I glanced around the room. My mother-in-law, Patricia, gave that tight, polite smile. The one that says, "Let's pretend we didn't hear that." My brother-in-law, Derek, stared off into space, suddenly fascinated by absolutely nothing. His favorite skill, disappearing when it mattered. And just like that, I understood something. This wasn't new. It just wasn't usually this visible. I set down what I was holding. Calmly. Not angrily. Not loudly. Just deliberately. Everyone quiet for a second. People didn't stop right away. They never do. Not when a woman speaks without raising her voice. So I didn't repeat myself. I didn't push. I just stood there and waited. One by one, conversations faded. The room slowly thinned into silence until even the background noise felt like it had stepped back to watch. Then I looked directly at Sabrina. "Can you repeat what you just said about my daughter's dress?" Her smile flickered. Just for a second. Then she laughed, waving a hand like I was being dramatic. "Oh my God, Grace, I was kidding. Don't be so sensitive." I nodded once. "I'm not sensitive," I said evenly. "I'm specific." That landed differently. Kylie stopped giggling. Derek finally looked up. Even Patricia's smile tightened. And then I said the sentence that changed everything. "In this family, we don't insult children for fun. If that's your hobby, do it somewhere else." Silence. Not awkward silence. Not confused silence. The kind that feels sharp. Emma looked up at me like she couldn't believe I said it out loud. Sabrina's expression shifted. Not embarrassed. Not apologetic. Something colder. Like she had just decided this was a game she was willing to play. "Wow," she said slowly. "Relax. It's not my fault you're sensitive." And then she did something that told me exactly who this was really about. She didn't look at me. She looked at Emma. like my daughter was the target. Like this entire moment was just a stage. Kylie leaned closer to Emma and whispered, just loud enough to be heard, "My mom buys me the good stuff." Another giggle. Emma's fingers tightened around the plates. Still no tears. Just smaller. And something in me went completely still. Not soft. Not emotional. Clear. I turned slightly so Emma could see my face. "You're okay," I told her quietly. Then I looked back at the room. Did everyone hear what she just said? Because here's the thing about people like Sabrina. They thrive in private. They depend on moments that disappear. They hate witnesses. My father-in-law, Howard, cleared his throat like he wanted to dissolve into the walls. Patricia's expression sharpened, less concerned about Emma, more concerned about the room. Derek muttered, "Babe, come on," in that useless tone people use when they want conflict to vanish without actually addressing it. Sabrina didn't even glance at him. She just shrugged. "Kids get teased," she said. "It builds character. Emma should toughen up." Toughen up. About her birthday. In front of everyone. I held her gaze for one long second. And in that pause, memories started lining up. Thanksgiving. Emma was 9. Sabrina laughing. She eats like she's training for something. Last summer. Sabrina touching her hair. "Oh, this texture is interesting." Small things. Tiny cuts. Over and over. And every time I told myself the same thing. Don't make a scene. Be the bigger person. Keep the peace. But here's what nobody tells you. Being the bigger person can slowly turn you into the quieter person. And one day, your child notices. Emma's cheeks were flushed now, bright red. But she still wasn't crying. She was doing that thing kids do when they're trying to be brave, staring at one fixed point, hoping no one sees them breaking. So I made a decision. Right there. I smiled. Polite. Almost gentle. "Sabrina," I said, "you're right." She lifted her chin slightly, like she'd won. Character matters. Then I continued. "So let's practice it." That made her blink. I turned to Kylie, keeping my voice soft. "Kylie, sweetheart, do you want to repeat what your mom teaches you to say about other people?" Her smile slipped instantly. She looked at Sabrina, waiting. Sabrina's expression hardened. "Don't talk to my daughter." I nodded. "Then don't use mine as a punching bag." And just like that, the room changed. This wasn't awkward anymore. This was something else. Something sharper. Something people couldn't ignore anymore. Patricia stepped in, her voice tight. "Grace, please, it's a birthday." I looked at her. "Exactly," I said. "That's why I'm stopping it." Sabrina leaned closer, lowering her voice, but not enough. People were listening now. "You think you're some kind of hero?" she muttered. "Look at her. She's always been soft." Soft. Like it was a flaw. Like kindness was something to be embarrassed about. And that's when I realized something important. This wasn't just carelessness. This wasn't just bad humor. Sabrina was proud of it. So I turned slightly, letting my voice carry just enough for the room. "Since we're sharing opinions about my child, I think it's fair we share the truth about yours, too." Everything stopped. Completely. Sabrina's face changed. Derek went still. Patricia's eyes widened. Emma whispered, "Mom." I squeezed her hand once. Quick.
steady.
Then I looked at the room. Do you all want to know what Sabrina said about Emma before you got here today? No one answered. But no one looked away either. And for the first time that night, Sabrina stopped smiling. When I asked, "Do you all want to know what Sabrina said about Emma before you got here today?" Nobody answered. But the silence wasn't empty. It was loaded. I could feel people holding their breath, like they were watching a car drift toward a guardrail, and nobody knew whether to scream or cover their eyes. Sabrina crossed her arms and tried to laugh, but it came out thin. "Oh my God," she said. "This is insane." Derek finally found his voice. "Grace, stop. You're making a scene." "Of course." Not Sabrina insulting a child. Not Kylie repeating it. Not Emma standing there on her own birthday looking like she wanted to disappear. I was making a scene. I looked at Derek and said, "A scene already happened. I'm just naming it." Then I pulled out my phone. No shaking hands. No dramatic pause. Just receipts. Because people like Sabrina count on one thing more than anything else. They count on your politeness. They count on you swallowing the truth because exposing it feels rude. Earlier that day, before the party had even started, Sabrina had texted me about Emma's dress. Not to compliment it. Not to ask where we bought it. She wrote, "Is she really wearing that? I can't have Kylie next to her in photos. She'll look messy."
Messy.
About my child. On her birthday. I looked up from the screen. Sabrina told me Emma would look messy in family pictures today. Patricia's head snapped toward Sabrina. Howard blinked, like his mind needed a second to catch up. Someone in the dining room made a tiny sound of shock. Emma let out a breath so small, I almost missed it, like she had been underwater. Sabrina's face went red, then pale, then red again. "That's not what I meant," she said quickly. "You're twisting it." I tapped the screen once. "I'm reading it." Patricia stepped forward, sharp and panicked. "Grace, put your phone away. This is not appropriate." I stared at her. What's not appropriate is an adult writing that about a child on her birthday. Then I asked the question I should have asked years earlier. Why is "don't embarrass the bully" always louder than "don't hurt the kid"? Kylie suddenly looked nervous. For the first time, she seemed to understand her mother might not win. Sabrina pointed at me. "You always do this. You always want attention." I laughed once. A short, tired laugh. "Attention," I repeated. "I'm trying to give my daughter a birthday." Derek moved between us slightly, like he could physically block consequences. "Just drop it for Emma." And that was when I turned to him. "No," I said. "I'm doing this for Emma, because she's been swallowing your wife's insults for years." Emma's eyes went glossy, not crying, just shiny, with the kind of bravery that breaks a mother in half. I softened my voice. "Sweetheart," I asked, "has she said things like this before?" Emma hesitated, and I waited. I didn't fill the silence for her. I didn't rescue Sabrina by changing the subject. Finally, Emma nodded once. "Clear." Small. But clear. That single nod hit the room harder than shouting ever could. Patricia's mouth opened, then closed. Howard looked like he wanted to rewind the last 10 minutes. Sabrina snapped, "She's exaggerating. She's a kid." I answered, "Exactly, a kid," which makes it worse. Someone whispered from the dining room, "This is crazy." And I thought, no. What's crazy is how long we all let it slide. Sabrina stepped back, pressing one hand to her chest like she had just been wounded. Fine, she said. If I'm so horrible, maybe we should just leave. Then she looked at Patricia, waiting. Not for truth. For protection. Patricia turned to me, not to Sabrina. Grace, apologize. You're ruining everything. And there it was. The family rule. Not written down. Never spoken directly. But always enforced. The person who breaks the silence becomes the problem. I looked at Patricia and felt something inside me settle. I'm not apologizing for protecting my daughter. The kitchen went stiff. Howard stood halfway, then sat back down. Derek rubbed his face like I was the headache. Sabrina smirked. See, she's always dramatic. Then she glanced toward Emma and muttered, She gets it from you. That was the line that erased the last bit of patience I had. I turned to the room. This party is for Emma, I said, calm and clear. Not for adults to be cruel. Sabrina rolled her eyes. It was a joke. I nodded. Then let's stop joking about children. I didn't read every message. I didn't scream. I didn't turn the kitchen into a courtroom. I just said one sentence that cut through all the pretending. If you can't be kind to the birthday girl, you can leave. People stared at me like I had broken some sacred rule. Sabrina laughed. You can't tell me to leave. This isn't your house. So I turned to Patricia and Howard, and I asked the simplest question in the world. Are you okay with an adult insulting your granddaughter on her birthday? That was when everyone went completely still. Because now, it wasn't gossip. It wasn't tone. It wasn't drama. It was yes or no. Howard finally spoke. Quiet. But firm. Sabrina, that's enough. Sabrina's smile dropped for real. And I knew immediately she wouldn't back down gracefully. She would escalate. She always did. Her eyes narrowed. Then she changed tactics. Grace has always hated me, she said, louder now. She's trying to embarrass me. Ask her son. He knows. My stomach tightened, because I knew exactly where she was going. Before I could stop her, she called toward the hallway. Ethan, come here. My son Ethan walked in from outside, holding napkins, completely confused. He looked from me to Sabrina, then to Emma, like he had stepped into a storm and didn't know where the lightning had started. Sabrina rushed to him first. Your mom is attacking me in front of everyone over a joke. People started talking all at once. Patricia. Derek. A couple cousins. Noise everywhere, like volume could bury what actually happened. So I looked Ethan directly in the face. Did you hear what she said about Emma's dress? He hesitated. Sabrina reached for his arm. I asked the only question that mattered. Do you think it's okay for an adult to insult your little sister and call it humor? Ethan glanced at Emma. He saw her standing there, quiet and hurt. For a second, I thought he understood. Then he exhaled. Mom, he said, you're going too far. Sabrina's shoulders relaxed instantly, like she had won. Patricia jumped in. Thank you, Ethan. Then Ethan looked at me with a strained, embarrassed expression. If you can't respect my wife, he said, we're leaving, and we need space from you. Space. The word landed colder than I expected. Emma whispered, So he picked her. I squeezed her hand. He picked the easier side, I said quietly. Ethan and Sabrina left. The door clicked shut behind them. Patricia turned to me like all of this was my fault. Look what you did, I answered softly. No, look what you allowed. Then I looked at Emma. Her candles were still waiting. Her cake sat untouched. And I made a decision I will never regret. We relit the candles. We sang again. Not perfectly. Not loudly at first. But we sang. Because I refused to let my daughter's 13th birthday end with her believing cruelty got the final word. Later that night, Ethan didn't text. Not that night. Not the next morning. Not for 3 days. And when he finally did, it was only one line. Can we talk alone? 3 days. That's how long it took for the silence to break. 3 days of Emma pretending she didn't care. 3 days of me watching her laugh a little too quickly at things that weren't funny, like she was trying to prove something to herself. 3 days of replaying that moment in the kitchen, Ethan standing there, choosing comfort over truth. So when my phone finally buzzed, I already knew who it was before I even looked. Can we talk alone? Not, I'm sorry. Not, how's Emma? Just that. I stared at the message for a long second. Then I typed back, public place. Because I wasn't about to walk into a private conversation where the truth could be softened, twisted, or quietly dismissed again. We met the next afternoon at a busy cafe downtown. Neutral ground. Bright lighting. Too many people around for anyone to pretend things didn't happen the way they did. When I walked in, Ethan stood up so fast he knocked his chair back. The sound scraped across the floor, loud enough to turn a few heads. He looked different. Smaller, somehow. Like the confidence he walked out of that party with had worn off, leaving something quieter underneath. Mom, he started. I didn't hug him. I didn't smile. I sat down and placed my bag beside me. Say what you came to say. He swallowed, looked down at his hands, then finally said it. Sabrina told me you were starting drama again. She said you were trying to humiliate her. I tilted my head slightly. And you believed her without asking what she said to your sister? He didn't answer. Which was an answer. He shifted in his seat, fingers tapping nervously against the table. I froze, he admitted quietly. I just wanted it to stop. Everyone was staring. I leaned forward just enough to keep my voice low, steady. Emma froze too, I said. The difference is, she's a child, and you're her brother. That landed. His eyes went glossy. He blinked hard, like he was trying to push it back. Sabrina thinks you hate her, he said after a moment. A tired breath escaped me. No, I said. I hate what she does. He nodded faintly, like he understood that, but didn't know what to do with it. Then he said something that shifted the entire conversation. She told me, if I don't defend her, I'm not a real husband. I didn't react right away. Didn't gasp. Didn't argue. I just looked at him. That's not marriage, I said calmly. That's a leash. He flinched. Not dramatically. Just enough to tell me it hit something real. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. Not as a weapon. Not as a performance. Just truth. I slid it across the table. Read what she sent me about Emma. He hesitated for half a second, then picked it up. His eyes moved across the screen, line by line, and I watched his expression change. Subtle at first, then sharper. When he reached the word messy, his jaw tightened. His fingers stilled. He finished reading, then pushed the phone back toward me like it burned. How bad has it been? He asked quietly. Not defensive. Not dismissive. Just honest. I didn't unload everything. Didn't list every comment. Every look. Every moment, Emma shrank in a room that was supposed to feel like family. I just said the truth. Bad enough that Emma stopped feeling safe around her own family. That was enough. He pressed his fingers to his eyes, breathing out slowly. For the first time since he walked into that cafe, he looked like someone who understood the weight of what had happened. "I need you to tell me what to do," he said. And there it was. The part most people get wrong. They think there's a complicated answer, a long explanation, something strategic. There isn't. "It's simple," I said, "and it's not negotiable." He straightened slightly. "Start with Emma. Apologize to her, not to me." He nodded quickly. "I will. I promise." Then he hesitated, and I already knew what was coming before he said it. "But Sabrina, she's going to be furious." I held his gaze. "Do you hear yourself?" He went quiet. Because he did. He heard it. The problem wasn't confusion. It was fear. Fear of what choosing the right thing would cost him. I stood up, sliding my bag over my shoulder. "I'm not going to tell you how to manage your marriage," I said. "But you don't get to keep everyone comfortable and keep Emma protected." I paused, just long enough for it to settle. "Pick one." Then I left. No dramatic ending. No lingering. Because some conversations don't need to be extended. They need to be understood. That weekend, he came to my house. Alone. No warning. No text. Just showed up. Emma was curled up on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at her phone like she wasn't waiting for anything. Like she didn't care. But I knew that look. Kids don't look like that when they don't care. Ethan stood in the doorway for a second before stepping inside. He didn't bring flowers. Didn't bring gifts. Just himself. Which, honestly, was the only thing that mattered. "Hey," he said softly. Emma didn't respond right away. She kept her eyes on the screen for a few seconds longer, then slowly looked up. He took a step closer, then stopped. Like he wasn't sure he'd earned the right to come any further. "I'm sorry," he said. His voice shook. "I didn't defend you. I should have. I failed you." Silence. Emma looked at him. Really looked at him. For a long second. And then she said something that made the entire room feel still. "Don't let your wife use me to prove you love her." No anger. No tears. Just clarity. The kind that doesn't come from adults. It comes from kids who've been paying attention longer than anyone realizes. Ethan nodded slowly. Like her words hit deeper than mine ever could. And in that moment, I knew something. This wasn't over. Not even close. Because now Ethan had to walk back into his life and decide who he was going to be when no one was watching. And that's the part no one can help you with. After Ethan left that afternoon, the house felt quieter than usual. Not peaceful. Not resolved. Just paused. Emma went back to her room without saying much. Blanket still wrapped around her shoulders like armor she wasn't ready to take off yet. I didn't follow her right away. Some moments you don't fix. You give them space to breathe. Because what she said, "Don't let your wife use me to prove you love her," that wasn't something I could soften or translate. That was truth. And truth has a way of sitting in a room long after the person who said it leaves. That night, I stood in the kitchen alone, replaying everything. The party. The silence. The way Ethan's voice sounded when he chose the easier side. And then the way it sounded when he finally saw what it cost. I didn't wonder if he felt guilty. I knew he did. What I didn't know was what he would do with that guilt. Because guilt doesn't fix anything. Action does. The next few days passed slowly. No messages. No updates. Just waiting. Not for him to come back, but for him to decide who he was going to be. And then, 5 days later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a question. It was a statement. I told her. I stared at the message, then replied. And 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then finally, it didn't go well. Of course it didn't. I leaned back against the counter, exhaling slowly. "What did you say?" I typed. The reply came faster this time. I told her she crossed a line, that what she said about Emma wasn't a joke, that it wasn't okay. I read that twice. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I wanted to be sure he had actually said it. "And?" I asked again. There was a longer pause this time, long enough for me to picture it. The argument, the defensiveness, the way Sabrina would twist it, flip it, turn herself into the victim. "She said I'm choosing you over her," he finally replied. "That I'm letting you control me." I closed my eyes for a second. There it was. The test. The line drawn exactly where I knew it would be. "And what did you say?" I typed. The typing bubble appeared almost immediately. I said I'm choosing what's right. I didn't smile. Not yet. Because saying it and standing by it are 2 different things. "What does that mean?" I asked. Another pause. Then, "She told me if I keep defending Emma, she doesn't know if this marriage works." There it was. The ultimatum. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just quiet enough to feel real. I read the message carefully, then typed 1 sentence. "Do you know your answer?" This time, the response didn't come right away. Minutes passed. Then 10. Then 15. I set my phone down and walked to Emma's room. She was sitting on her bed, sketchbook open, pencil moving slowly across the page. I knocked lightly. She looked up. "Hey," I said softly. She gave a small nod. I stepped inside, sitting at the edge of her bed. "You okay?" She shrugged. "Yeah." Not convincing, but honest enough for now. I brushed a strand of hair away from her face. "You handled yourself really well the other day," I told her. She looked down at her sketchbook. "I just said what I was thinking." I smiled faintly. "Exactly." She hesitated, then asked, "Do you think he meant it when he said sorry?" I didn't answer right away, because this was the part that mattered. Not protecting her from disappointment, but preparing her for reality. "I think he meant it in that moment," I said carefully. She looked up. "And now?" I met her eyes. "Now he has to prove it." She nodded slowly, like she already understood that better than most adults. Before I could say anything else, my phone buzzed again in my hand. I glanced down. "Ethan." I opened the message. I told her I won't stay in a situation where my sister is treated like that. She said I'm giving up on us. I said, I'm not giving up, but I'm not ignoring it either. I read it once. Then again. This time, I did smile. Not because everything was fixed. Not because the story was over. But because for the first time, he wasn't choosing the easier side. I typed back, "That's a start." A few seconds later, another message came through. "I don't know what happens next." I looked at the screen for a moment. then answered honestly, "You're not supposed to yet." Because that's the truth nobody likes to say out loud. There isn't a clean ending. There isn't a moment where everything resets and everyone becomes better overnight. There's just choices, one after another, and the kind of person you become because of them. That evening, Ethan didn't come over. He didn't call. He didn't try to smooth things over. And for once, that was exactly what I wanted. Because growth doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in the space where things are uncertain, where you don't know if what you did will cost you everything. And you choose it anyway. Later that night, Emma came into the kitchen while I was cleaning up. She leaned against the counter, quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "Do you think things will go back to normal?" I dried my hands slowly. "No," I said. She looked at me. Not scared. Just thinking. "Better?" she asked. I met her gaze. "That depends on what people choose to do next." She nodded. Then, after a second, she smiled a little. Not the big, carefree smile from before, but something steadier, stronger. And in that moment, I realized something. That birthday didn't just show her who people were. It showed her who she was allowed to be. Someone who didn't have to shrink to keep the peace. Someone who could expect better. Even from family. Especially from family. And as for Ethan, his story wasn't finished. Not with Sabrina. Not with us. Because the real question was never what he said in a cafe. Or even what he said in that message. The real question was this: when no one is watching, when there's no audience, no pressure, no immediate consequence, who does he choose to be?